Welcome to the Jersey Justice Podcast, featuring your hosts, attorneys Gerald Clark and Mark Morris.
Okay, cool, Alex. Thanks for coming on. So the slogan of our podcast, it's Jersey Justice, but the slogan is Law, Policy, Life. So we super appreciate you coming on. You would fall into like the life category because we don't intend on asking you questions about legal cases or public policy and stuff. So we super appreciate you coming on. So you guys, you started Faherty Brand, you and your brother. You know, it's funny. So like I do these long rows, like up to 15-mile rows, or I'll run. And at my age, did you ever read like David Goggins stuff?
Yeah.
Okay. So I read David Goggins, and his book was like really awesome for that. What's it?
That Can't Hurt Me?
Can't Hurt Me.
Yeah.
And he talks about like when he's doing an ultra marathon or he's doing some crazy workout, like halfway in, he'll have these demons come into his mind, like, what the hell are you doing? You're a loser. You can't do this. Just stop running now. Give it up. And when I do these long rows or real long workouts and stuff, the same thing happens to me. Like I'll be rowing and it'll be like, I'll be, 4 miles into like a rowing sprint in the ocean, and these little demons will come into my head like, what the hell are you doing at your age? You shouldn't be doing this. You can't do this. It's the craziest thing. So when you and your brother, however many years ago when you were driving around in the truck?
That was in 2013.
Okay.
So it's been 12 years.
So I was always like, what I would say when I saw you and your brother, I knew, did you work at Ralph Lauren?
My brother did.
Mike worked at Ralph Lauren. And I'm like, he's got a good job at Ralph Lauren. And then what were you doing?
I was working in private equity for doing investing.
Yeah. Okay. And I heard this. And then I'm like, wait a minute. Now these guys are driving around in a truck with these T-shirts. And I was like, what I would say to people is I'd be like, yeah, this is cool. That's interesting. Like, I hope that works out. But to be 100% honest, part of me had those demons like, these freaking guys, what are they doing? They're not going to. I mean, this guy's given up a good job at Ralph Lauren. He's given up a private equity job to go sell T-shirts from a truck. What is this?
Yeah, bathing suits. Yeah, T-shirts and bathing suits.
So
you weren't the only one, Jerry.
Like, tell me that stuff. Like, I think.
I mean, it's
your story's fascinating.
Our journey's interesting in that when we're 18, you have to write a college essay, and I wrote mine on like chasing after the ice cream man in Spring Lake. It was stupid. And Mike actually wrote a real college essay. He wrote it on starting a clothing brand. And he knew when he was 18, that's what he wanted to do the rest of his life. And, when you're a twin brother, when you have a twin, it's like the dream is like, maybe we could work together one day. And so Mike wrote that essay, and we're like, you know what? Like, we're going to do this one day. And so that's like, going back to your question on the demons and what are we doing? Like, we had just like this one being a twin, one having this like dream since we were so young of like, so a lot of the things we were doing between what we studied in college to what we did after college, a lot of it was like to be able to get ourselves in the best possible position to make the brand successful, because the odds are stacked against us, especially in the fashion industry. But it's for Mike to have the ability to like at that age know what he wants to do the rest of his life was like the key. And some of it was like I was betting on him, it was like I had some money saved so I could kind of get the business off the ground. And stylistically, it was also a brand like I wanted it. So I think you had this thing of like when you start something, you really want it. So like I really wanted this product for myself and this brand for myself. And it was our life. We grew up in Spring Lake, grew up surfing, grew up, living and breathing the surf brands and going to surf shops and Brave New World. And then we were teenagers one day, my dad and mom were like, actually, we're moving to New York City. And So I went to high school in New York City. And so stylistically, we're like these surfer dudes who are now like living in New York City. And so it's like, we were just like the surfer kids from Jersey or like now in New York. And I think my brother Mike was like, okay, I'm now living in New York. He's always liked style. Like, we would spend so much time going back to school shopping. He liked cool sneakers. He just had style since we were little. And it was, I live in New York. I want to find style that like I can actually now wear in the city, but also wear in Jersey when I'm at home. And a lot of the brands in the city were like very like serious, like I'm in the city, or like, you know, some of the stuff at Brave New World was like, I'm only a surfer and I only can wear t-shirts and shorts. And so I think Mike had this epiphany when he would go back to school shopping with my dad in New York, going to the Polo store, like Bloomingdale's. Like, there's some great stuff out there. I wish my t-shirts felt like the t-shirts at Bloomingdale's.
Right.
Like, I wish the quality was better. And he wrote this essay on a brand called Coast to Curb, and that was the beginning of him and I starting our brand together when we were 18. And Mike went on to he wanted to go to art school. He was always a really good artist. And so when he was like, you know, when you're an artist, you know, what am I gonna do the rest of my life? It's like, I don't know, am I gonna be a painter? Am I gonna be a ceramicist? You know, it's like, there's not that many when you're like a true artist or a graphic designer. And he's like, I want to be a fashion designer. So he ended up going to a school called Washington University in St. Louis, Missouri, which is a Division III school. And he went there because it was the one school he could play competitive basketball, Division III basketball, and also study fashion. It's not many.
I was going to say that Venn diagram.
There's not many. Like, he was a captain. He was a great player. He was captain of his
Wow.
team, and he was also a fashion designer. And then he went and worked at Ralph Lauren. That was his dream, to work at Ralph Lauren, and he actually got the job because you know, he graduated, he was sort of looking for a job, and we were at the Parker House, and Art Delia, who some people may know, his wife Marianne worked at Ralph Lauren, and we were like catching up, having some beers on the back porch at Parker House, and Marianne was like, "Oh yeah, I work at Ralph Lauren." I'm like, "Oh I'm looking for a job. I'll show you my resume," and you know, sent the resume, had a bunch of interviews, ended up getting a job working in kids for 6 months, and then he did that for 6 months, and then after that got a job on the men's team, and but along the way, like, I was going to be the one that ran the business, so like I was always the brother that like saved money. Like, I remember my mom tells a story of like one day she was like cleaning our room and she found like a duffel bag of like cash I had hoarded away. And I like always just like was loved, like I was always like, Mike always was super carefree, like no care in the world, you know, and I was always like worried about everything and like making sure Mike was okay. I just had that, like, we had this like twin dynamic where I've like been his CEO since I was born.
Wow.
So it's like this natural genetic inclination. So I think when he said, like, when he wrote about the business, it was like, how cool would that be? Like, I've kind of been doing it anyway.
Yeah.
You know, taking, you know, help, you know, getting Mike through life and making him successful. And I thought the idea of running a business would be awesome because I always had like this entrepreneurial streak inside of me. And
Didn't Mike play football at Yale?
I played football.
That
yeah.
was you that played
Yeah.
football at Yale.
So Mike was a
Wow.
basketball player.
Okay.
And
I gotta also admit, like, I definitely have trouble telling you guys.
yeah,
apart.
most people do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for most of my life, I was just known as Twin.
Okay.
Both
Shit.
of you guys, they would just say twin.
Twin. Yeah, so friends would call our house and be like, hey, is one of the twins there? Like, there was no, like, Alex or Mike. There was no
Yeah.
differentiation. And then in high school was when, you know, when we actually decided to play different sports. Some of it was like, we needed, like, our own identity. So I played football at Yale. That got me there, and had a good career. But I knew I wanted to get into finance and investment banking and that kind of world, because I remember someone in college telling me, like, you know, you make a lot of money doing it, and actually you got to work a lot. You can learn a lot in a short period of time. And it was 2005, 2004, so it was like a bull market, and people were making good money. So I started taking some classes when I was at Yale. I got a couple internships in the kind of investment banking world. Landed a job right out of college, in investment banking, did that for 2 years, and I worked for a private equity firm for about 5 years. And I had some interesting experiences there. I was on the board of a women's clothing company that the company owned. We owned a grocery store that was involved. It's like a little tangential, like, relationship to kind of the retail business. I wouldn't say enough to be dangerous, but enough to like know some basics. And but Mike and I were still talking about it. We're going to start this company one day, but we were getting a little older. You know, it's like 28, 29. You know, Mike's moving up at Ralph Lauren. You know, I'm moving up. I'm starting to make good money. And that question of like, should I do it or not? Like, I started to have those questions because it was like I had this really great career, and I wasn't sure. Like, I remember, like, for a couple of years, it was really dragging on me if I should do it or not.
Like if you Google or ChatGPT, whatever, like AI, how many businesses fail,
Oh
how
my
many
God,
startups
100%.
fail? What is it like 1 in 40 succeed or something?
I would say in our industry, especially in
even
the clothes, it's
more.
probably like, I mean, it's like winning the lottery.
Yeah, and
almost.
it's like within X amount of years, only a much lower percentage are even still in business and things like
Yeah.
that.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
But I was still young and dumb, and I had this like fire inside of me that had been ignited for years and years and years. And I think as I was getting like moving up in my career, I was also getting a little more confident.
Your father was like entrepreneurial.
He was entrepreneurial too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we had that. And like, even I remember when I was in college, when I was like, I want to start learning about the business some more. And so I actually like, I had an eBay storefront that I managed, where I would go to TJ Maxx and Marshalls and like buy stuff and resell it on eBay. So I don't know. I had a little like, I wanted it.
Listen, I first met you two when you were like 2 years old, 3 years old, 4 years old. I lifeguarded at the beach, and you two were the funniest two kids walking around, man. You and Michael would walk around like this, and like one right behind the other.
That's funny.
I still lifeguard at the beach.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and I think that's we're from a big family. The youngest is 7 brothers and sisters, four half brothers and sisters, and 3 brothers. Big family.
But do you know what my first save was as an ocean lifeguard?
No, what was it?
It was your brother Mike.
Was it?
Yes.
Just so maybe we complete. And I saved Jed over there one time too, I think.
Jed, our crack tech guy.
And Jerry ran out next to me. He said, "You got to watch the other one too."
No, I remember it was at the beach, and it was like a high tide day. It was like, well, it was low tide getting high tide, and
When it switches and just starts sucking out.
it wasn't that. It was the wave came up, and he went, and then he went under. You guys must have been. You weren't there, but Mike was there, and it was.
So you're saying without you,
He
there
went
would be
under. It was
no
my first
Faherty
save, and I
Brand.
plucked
Yeah,
him
this is the
out.
reason I'm here. I owe Jerry. I owe Jerry.
You guys could negotiate that after we're done. You're cut.
All right, so
Funny.
so those demons had to be coming in your head, like, hey,
Yeah,
these,
so the
these
demons
things,
started coming in my head 2010, 2011. Like,
When you're thinking about doing it.
Yeah, I met a woman in my freshman year of college who I fell in love with her, and we ended up, getting back together when I was, 2010. So like all of a sudden thinking about getting married, having a family, but then there's like this Faherty thing, like just kind of percolating, and we would tell our friend, we've always been telling our friends about it. So people are like, oh, you guys gonna do this?
How did you come up with the I mean, obviously the name, but did you always think long before?
We didn't think in the beginning. We didn't think we were going to name it Faherty. We thought we were going to give it a name, and we couldn't come up with a name. And then we were like, "Fuck it, let's just call it Faherty."
Yeah.
A lot in our industry, a lot of people put names on it.
Yeah.
So we're like, it's not the best name, but it's a pretty good name. And it's like, I think because the brand is such a, it's us. It's like our vibe. It's us. It's our brand, that we're like, this is going to be a way we're going to sink our teeth into it, and people are going to really feel like the authenticity of it. And what really happened, the big moment was at the end of 2011. My brother Mike called me on the phone. I'll never forget this. And I like heard some music. It was like music. You could tell he was driving in a car. Like the windows were down, and he was just like, "I'm doing this. Like
Wow.
I'm quitting Ralph Lauren, and I'm gonna do this." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Like this is real." And he was like, I had gotten home, and we had just gone to Vegas for a bachelor party, and he was driving, went to Palm Springs and was driving somewhere. And I think he just was probably hungover and didn't want to go back to work, and had been thinking about this. So it was just like the right song came on, and he's like, I'm gonna do it. And I was like, oh, like, okay, this is, and so he started working on it, and I still wasn't, 100% sure what I was gonna do. And
How old were you guys when your father passed away?
my dad died in 2010, so he was ready to pass. He had already passed, and my mom and dad were both very, my dad as an entrepreneur, like had a lot of ups and downs, and so I think my dad's advice for me too before he died was like, you got a great career, like don't mess it up, like
that's what I want to ask. Where's your
path.
dad in this along this way? What's he telling you guys?
Yeah, so my dad was like, you should keep your job, because he was like, you should keep your job. You got a great career, you can provide for your family,
Wow.
My mom was similar because she kind of lived same as my dad, like a little bit ups and downs. And everyone I worked with was like, "This is the dumbest thing I've ever heard."
Yeah,
Like,
because you said before, you're like, oh, we're young. I mean, you're what, 5-7 years into a career?
Yeah.
Like you're saying, making
29, yeah, like 29.
you probably now have like a lifestyle.
I remember, like, I
that-
told the guy who runs our firm, and he's like, I just want you to, like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And I was like, oh, okay, I didn't know that was the, because I'm so excited about it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm so fired up, and I think it's gonna be. I'm convinced it's gonna be successful.
I think a lot of times when people will poo-poo ideas and things like that, it's really they're saying something about themselves.
100%. I absolutely agree with that.
Like, and they want to say that's a dumb idea because I'd never had the cojones or whatever to do that. So, you know, a lot of it's like the naysayer thing.
Yeah.
I get it some now because some of the guys will be like, I remember I told you not to do it, but I'm happy you did it.
I feel like sometimes too, that's a dad's role though, just being like, oh, I don't know, do the safe thing, you know, stay the course, do that.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, I give 100%, you know, 100% credit on like actually doing it to my wife. Like she was, you know, we were just getting married, and she was like, you know, you've been freaking telling me about this since we were 18 years old. Like, you got to do it. And that, I think, was like the big thing, knowing like about to get married, and she's supportive of it, and she wants me to do it. And she was okay with, at the time, I don't think she knew what that would entail, but at the time she was really excited about it. So I think that was the real, like, as I was mulling on it between what my parents wanted, what her wanted, I was like, listen, this is something I've been talking about forever. And I'll never forget when I did it. I was on a work trip in Austria, and I was like red-eyed and jet lagged, and I couldn't sleep all night because I was thinking about it, and it just, the energy was just ready, and I like woke up in the middle of the night. I was like, I'm fucking doing it.
Yeah.
wow. So when you say your brother had already like started working, like what does that even entail? Like take it kind of like from the soup to nuts. How do you even start? Like,
so started working on the logo. So I think he, you know, coming from Ralph Lauren, I think was really helpful because that brand really gets like how to think about a brand like really holistically from a lifestyle perspective, a branding perspective. So he started working on the label. So I'll never forget like him sending me ideas of the label, and you know, we wanted like a wave in it somehow, and so a lot of different iterations of a logo that he worked on. That was kind of like one of the first things I remember. And then we had to make the decision of like what products we were going to make to start, because it was like, we got to start selling something.
Are you, as you're doing this, do you guys still have your day jobs?
Mike does not have his day job.
Right.
I still have my day job.
Okay.
So Mike is doing a little bit of consulting for some factories that he knew, and I'm at this point, he's pretty much on the tit.
So what's he? Which is what?
On my tit.
On you.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was
Your
gonna,
bankroll.
I was going to ask, like, what's he doing for healthcare at that point? Like just on Cobra?
He probably was on Cobra for that
Okay.
point, or maybe he didn't even have healthcare. Like, you know, 29. You know, Mike doesn't historically hasn't been too concerned with money or health.
Got it.
You know, he's just sort of living.
We're not going to trail off into an Obamacare thing, but the reason they have ideas to mandate people have to get health insurance is that the young, healthy people are paying into the system, and if you only have older people then it doesn't work by insurance. But let's keep it to the life part, not law or policy.
Jed's back there going,
Jerry,
don't get us flagged. Don't get us flagged.
Jerry had an in.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's my nature, you know this. Anyway, Mark, go. You were
No. So he's designing a logo. That's kind of step
logo,
one.
and then we had to
what's
decide
our
what product we wanted to make. You know, and so we, you know, I think given some of the what we wanted, what we were looking for, we decided we want to start with just making swimwear. So we started designing men's and women's bathing suits, and we wanted to do it with, you know, more sustainable materials. Like there was some really cool innovation happening back in that time around recycled plastics, recycled water bottles.
I got to jump in real quick. Okay, so when I grew up at the beach, when I was a little grom in the 80s, whatever, at the beach, we would wear shorts and jump into the ocean and the pool and everything in shorts. And it was a funny thing because we'd have long shorts, would be soaking wet, and that was a thing, like, you know, and then they'd be wet all day. You know what I mean? Like if you went in the morning and then you went hiking or something, your shorts would be wet because they're heavy cotton. But that was almost like like in Monmouth County, Jersey Shore, surfer deal was to go in like big ass shorts and get them all wet, like a pair of shorts, like khakis or something. But anyway, keep going. Tell me your.
And so I think we had grown up with the surf brands and
and then I was like, when I first saw your thing, and I'm like, these guys got it because they have the all day shorts.
Yeah.
Okay, so they have these where you can jump in, but then they'll dry and stuff.
So when you're on the Parker House back deck,
exactly. So that was basically what we were designing. We were designing what did we want. So
exactly. See,
100%.
so because you grew up and you experienced
exactly the same thing. So in women's it's a little bit different. We sort of made some bikinis and one pieces, but in men's it was creating a board short that had side pockets. Was really important to us. Had a back zipper pocket, and actually at that time shorts were really really long. Was like something that was above the knee, and I think that was important to us.
Yeah, we're talking about that. You picture fit. Andy Irons like in a barrel. His like board shorts down below his knees.
And some of that was, as I said, because of our influence living in New York City at the time. Like bathing suits at some of these designers started getting really short. So it was like there's we don't want really short, but there's something like something a little bit more athletic or above the knee, and. So Mike started working on. So like, this is what we're going to start with, and it was like it's got to be sustainable. It's got to have great craftsmanship. It's got to be great fabric, and so that's then what Mike started working on was finding the right fabric, finding the right factories, and so kind of utilizing some of his networks that he made at Ralph Lauren to kind of get this first run of inventory, so that we could launch the brand. So we then went to the process of like designing the styles, getting all the going. We put the inventory orders in. And at this time, we're putting the inventory orders in because you got to, in our business, you have to do it almost 5 months to 6 months in advance. You got to put your orders in because you got to create custom fabric. You got to find all, make all the components that go into it.
So Mike's designing it.
Yep.
Almost like an architectural plan for a house or something.
So what happens is you create a tech pack, which is like an architectural rendering of what the short looks like with all the dimensions, all the fit, everything. And then there's another, in the tech pack, it's all the components. One of the things Mike wanted was he wanted... on the board short, one of those classic like Birdwell rope ties, and so he had to design find a sustainable material, but was also quick dry, so he had to find that material. And then he was really intent on the detail of the end tipping, the metal
aglet.
tipping, had a Faherty logo on it. So it was he had to kind of source that. It's like all these little and the back zipper. He wanted a little Faherty on the back zipper. So all these little things have to be designed individually as individual components, and then
I think this is really cool. I don't know if you could see it, but just the little logo on the shirt is just it's cool.
Yeah, the sun and the wave is that's kind of that's been our logo since the beginning.
Yeah,
and I think it's a big epitome of the brand and that going back to logo. That's where logo becomes super important because.
Yeah, I mean, you think about
it
even
helps identify who the brand is, and so now there's people who I'm sure wear Faherty, and they're walking down the street, and they're like, "Oh shit, I see that guy has. That's cool."
And you don't need the logo. I'm just thinking out loud here. You don't need the logo to be gaudy in your face, and it's classy. It's like a.
Well, it's subtle. I mean, think about your brother coming from Ralph Lauren. You think about that logo. I think Nike's probably the main logo people think of. It's, kind of simple, but stands out. Yeah, it's awesome.
See, when I think of Ralph Lauren, and not talk about Ralph Lauren too much, but I think of the 80s and kind of the douchey guy in the movie with the, do people, I don't even think we wear those things anymore,
Yeah, pop collar is not as big, but Ralph Lauren's got a monster business, and the sort of the prep, that prep style is it's kind of come in and out a little bit, but it's definitely popular now.
Really?
So you guys, it's wild because I feel like you have to be part engineer, part fashion designer, part clearly entrepreneur, but how do you even begin to be okay, where are we going to find our material from? How are we going to come up with the design for this? Is it your brother having that background?
I think that's what that's what he did for so long. And, I think one of the benefits of, our brand's somewhat of a lifestyle of fashion brand, right? So a lot of brands in our space are maybe more I just make athletic wear.
Mm-hmm.
Some brands are I just make fashion. And so Mike's, because of his interests, he's a combination of the two. So for years at Ralph Lauren, he'd been designing his own fabric, developing his own components, his own buttons. So he had a supply chain and an experience of different buttons, he picks out every single detail still of all the shirts and products that for the most part that we make. And that was training that he got at a place like Ralph, who is, and he designed a brand that one of the brands he designed there is a cool brand they have called Double RL. It's RRL. It's like their luxury Western vintage brand. And it was a cool experience for him because basically it's Ralph's favorite brand because he's got this house in Telluride. And Ralph loves to dress like he's a Western rancher, even though he's this guy from the Bronx. And
Jewish guy.
I don't
from the
blame
Bronx,
him.
I think.
yeah, he just loved this brand Double RL because he's like, it's so cool. And so they had, for a small brand, good budgets, and they made sure the designers had what they needed to be successful. But what the brand did was it was about making old-looking, old vintage products new, but they needed to look old. So in order to do that, to buy a shirt that looks like it's from 1910, there's a lot of process that goes into making an old shirt new look old. And so he learned a lot about do that, like how do yarns come together? How do you wash things? How do you there's so much detail that he knows that he can geek out like a scientist about it. And I think that's a piece of what he learned in that.
And when Mike's there, creating the architectural plan, and saying like, I want this button and I want this here, this material, that's increasing the cost.
Yes.
Like
every custom detail increases the cost. So like we wanted a on the board short for the zipper. We didn't want a zipper and we didn't want Velcro because like Velcro over time like wears off and a zipper on a pair of board shorts just doesn't seem right. So he did he wanted it to look like a coconut button, but it was made out of like a recycled material, and it looked like a coconut button, and it was like it wouldn't because coconut can break down with a lot of salt, and
right.
So all these different components add another X to the price, X to the price, but that's for him. Like he had this, all of a sudden you have this designer who like now has this ability to create this product that he's always wanted to create.
Did you guys ever have any tension? Like, come on, Mike, we don't need the this on that. Like, let's bring the cost down.
In the beginning, I had no idea what I was doing.
Okay.
So I'm like, all right, Mike, like you're the great designer. Like, let's do it. But I quickly realized, when all of a sudden it's like, what do we have to price these shorts at?
Right.
To make a proper margin. And it's like, we got to price these shorts at like $120.
Right.
Which to some people who are used to buying $70 board shorts is like, this is crazy.
Yeah. Back in the day, at that time, that was,
And so that at the time, coming from New York City, like, and living there at the time, like a little bit more approachable in New York. But when you get to the rest of the world, like $100 and something bathing suit, it's definitely for some people like, wow, this is crazy. So when we launched, we also had, really high quality, individualized product that was very like specialized by this designer. So people who got it put it on and they were like, wow, this has a lot of stuff. Like this is not just your regular slap something together. Yeah. Like you can tell this is a short that someone really spent a lot of time making. And, but that also like causes a
keep going.
That causes a price. And then the hardest thing in the beginning was how much to order.
Yeah.
How much are we going to sell? Because you got to order 6 months in advance and you have no idea who's going to buy it.
Yeah.
Like,
so when you say when you launch, is that because I don't quite know the origin
So we had
story?
a date. Yeah. So we had a date. So I left. Mike leaves at the end of 2011. He starts working on it. I make the decision at some point in early 2012, I'm going to do it too. And then we started talking to the factories, and it's like we knew the product was going to be ready. The factories gave us the date of February. Mm-hmm. So we're like, all right.
Where are these factories?
At this
initially,
point, at this point, we made in Taiwan. So Taiwan has a lot of innovative fabric.
The clothes have to say where they're made, right? That's just a law in the U.S., I guess?
That's a law pretty much everywhere.
Okay.
So there was this really great factory, a really great mill factory that Mike had worked with on some more technical product. So this factory and mill in Taiwan was where Mike, as he reached out to all of his different resources, they were ones that were like, Mike, we'd love, some people we can't do this, too small.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
Because they're really small. These factories, every time you have to make a product for the first time, there's a lot of excess startup costs. And so they got to bank on, I actually think there's going to be a repeat business for this to be worthwhile because it's just not a super profitable venture for them. So there's this one factory, he had built a great relationship over the years in Taiwan. And he did a trip at some point after he left Ralph Lauren. We went everywhere. He went to all these old factories, met with them. And this was one that was like, we really want to support you. Mike, and so that's where he kind of like, but he had to source the fabric. You know, he had to source from a lot of different places. But it's really finding all the different pieces and the person that will make it for you.
Do you find in business today that, you know, we talk so much about AI and virtual this and virtual that, or, you know, beat me on LinkedIn or this thing, that the personal relationships are like high priority? I mean, like,
Yeah.
you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean that was, I mean, you know, Faherty.
Like
yeah, and as I'll keep, like, because I think the early days story is really important to like what that means. And
let me just jump in real quick and then keep going. But like the office here, the law office, we have like 15, 16 employees, and like I'm like exhausted today. Not exactly, I was on a red eye, but it's not exactly from running the office and 15 employees, but that's something to do with it. I just can't understand. Like every time I go on social media and Faherty, we just opened up a store in Telluride and we just opened up a store in Nantucket. I'm like, how do they do this? Like, I don't know how. We'll get down. I don't want to jump ahead here, but how do you go from to then all these stores, and how do you manage that beast? You know, it's just. But anyway, tell your story. We'll get to that.
Yeah, it's a great question. We'll happy to talk some more about it. Got that first run. We put the order in. No idea how much order. So I was like, oh yeah, like, you know, I did some of my spreadsheeting that I used to do in my finance job, and I'm like, oh yeah, well, you know, this is kind of a and like, you know, then we go. So then we have this launch date. We have the inventory that we're gonna make, and then we have this launch date. So leading up to the launch, we're like, oh, we gotta like. We gotta get PR. So how do we get PR? You have to get a website. How do we get a website? And a lot of that in the beginning is like some of the relationships that we had. You know, we ended up building our first website with Chris Delaney at SEM Geeks. Oh, yeah. And Brian Califano, who's a local guy, was our art director. Matt Catalano, who's a friend of ours from Brielle, did all the imagery for us. So it was like people that we knew in our life who could do it for cheap, relatively less. I don't want to say, I hate the word cheap. Relatively good value to help us kind of get it off the ground. So we kind of went out to all of our people. So I remember we did this big photo shoot. Actually, one of our first photo shoots was we flew through Aguadilla.
Oh, in Aguadilla?
Yeah,
okay.
we were at one of the, I forget which wave it was, but we actually launched, we'll get to it. We actually launched the brand on April 1st of 2013 in Puerto Rico.
I didn't know that.
Because we were like, you know what, let's turn the website on in Puerto Rico, because that was always like one of our favorite places to go surfing. And if we're going to like start this brand, we've always wanted to, like, we're going to surf in the morning. Yeah. And then we actually launched in San Juan in someone's apartment. We turned the website on and we're just like sitting there like, oh my God, is anyone going to buy anything?
So I've been to Puerto Rico. You know, I'm a resident of Puerto Rico now. And I see how you guys do those photo shoots. I like the ones in Nantucket. And I always said, man, these guys should do one in Puerto Rico, because there's a lot of, but it's funny, you're way ahead of that. But I'm thinking it might have been like Boracay Beach would be really good, or maybe Surfers Beach or one of those. But anyway, go ahead.
And so then we're like, okay, is anyone going to like buy anything? You know, you just turn the website on, you're like, is anyone going to buy anything? And, you know, we sent emails out to friends, and, you know, some friends bought. And then we ended up getting a couple interesting press articles. A couple magazines wrote about it. I remember this big one where all of a sudden, like, we were in the New York Post on Memorial Day weekend as like about the brand, in like one of their lifestyle sections. GQ did a little write up on us, so we're getting a little bit of press, but like no one knows who we are. Yeah, and so we have all this.
But it was a complete niche. Like, did you know you were filling a void in the market?
Yeah, we felt like we were filling a void in the market.
It seems like it worked. It works. I'm just from the cheap seats looking at it, because, like you already said, this grew organically from your experience of having a professional life and surfing and spending time at the beach, you know, and meshing the two. And it's crazy too, because now everything since, you know, COVID is so much more laid back and relaxed. Like I can't remember the last time I put on a suit, and I'm a lawyer, you know? And so you're filling that void where you could technically wear the shorts or at work and at the beach.
Yeah.
But anyway, keep going.
And
tell me a stuff.
You know, is anyone going to buy? You know, anyone going to buy? And like, you know, all of a sudden, at this point, like the stakes have gotten a lot higher. Like the lead up to it's amazing. You know, you're like, I remember I quit my job in February and we launched in April. So those couple months were amazing. You know, like I had this stressful finance job for so long, and now I'm like this dream of mine, I'm building it, and so I'm in this like euphoria of this is going to happen. And then all of a sudden you launch, and all of a sudden day one that pressure turns on of like, how the hell this business successful. And yeah, we got some press when we launched and we were filling a niche, but like all of a sudden, like you realize in our business, like you got to buy the inventory up front. So like all the money I had saved for years was like, like evaporates.
Did you have a plan B? Did you have like, oh, well, I could fall back on a rich uncle, or I could?
No.
No.
At that point, I had, just our family situation was like, I had been like the Mike made no money as a designer. My mom was single. And so it was like, we put everything on the line, and we're like, this is what we're going to do. And then all of a sudden this business just eats. It is the cookie monster.
It's an empty pit.
It's an empty pit. And I learned that really quick because of the inventory piece, where we had to buy minimum quantities from the factory.
So far in advance.
So we had to buy like 4 to 5 months of inventory, and the factory had no credit history with us. So like, you got to pay up front. So all of a sudden it's like so much of our money went to this factory. So quickly we realized, all right, we gotta raise some money, like, to get this thing off the ground. We had launched the website. We had a little bit of traction, a couple of news articles, like people.
I heard about how you were raising funding, and I'm like, I'm not doing that.
What were you doing to raise funding?
So we did.
So how dumb was I?
Yeah. You weren't dumb. You were smart.
No, clearly.
We just went out we put together a pitch deck.
Yeah.
And we went out to friends and family and people I used to work with, people I grew up with. I'm sure you heard about it from people.
I did. That's what I'm saying.
We were on the block, and
I might have gotten the pitch
went
deck.
out to as many people as I ever met, and some people, like, best friends, like, yeah, I'll give you $5,000.
Yeah.
Some brothers and sisters, I'll give you $5,000. So like, it was a lot. We ended up having like 40 people or so of like friends and people we knew from growing up, people I worked with, who gave somewhere between $5,000 and $100,000. Like. And it was just because they believed in knew Mike and I, probably had extra money lying around, and they were like, you know what? If this thing is successful, it'd be nice to like put something into it. But it wasn't enough. Like, and what ended up happening was Mike, and this goes back to relationships, was Mike, when he was at Ralph, made shirts at this factory in India, in Chennai, India, which is Chennai, also known as Madras, is when Ralph was doing all those Madras, like, cool shirts in the 70s and 80s. Really like preppy shirts, made them in this factory in Chennai, India, at this guy Ajay, factory called RK Industries. And so Ajay is our age, and Mike had met him when he was working for his dad, helping his dad run the factory. And so they were like, became friends, because Mike would go there a couple times a year. He would stay at Ajay's house. Like, they built a great friendship. And so Jay was, of all the people we call it, Jay was the one who came in and was like, I actually really want to, I believe in you guys, and I actually can be really helpful to you. So we had at the same time this vision of creating a clothing line too, that we would launch the next year. And so Jay was like, I'll help you guys make your clothing, like the full clothing line. And so Jay became our largest investor at the time, and gave us, like, basically, we're making 50 units, 100 units. Like,
and he's in India.
He's in Chennai, India.
Wow, okay.
But Mike had made shirts with him for years.
Yeah.
And worked with him for a long time. And it was just, he became one of the catalysts to, like, that not just some financial money, but also the ability to move on from just bathing suits, which we knew we wanted to and needed to do.
Yeah.
In one, like, he was doing stuff for us that he wouldn't do for anyone else, just because he was now an investor.
So you start in 2012. It's just bathing suits.
2013, April 2013, just bathing suits. We had a website, and then we built a mobile store that we called the Mobile Beach House, that we traveled the country with for the first year.
That's what I was talking about. Like, these guys are driving around in the truck. What the hell are they doing?
So so 2013 was when you started selling the bathing suits, and then that same year you went and did a full clothing line?
Clothing line happened the next year in April of 2014. So the
Wikipedia,
truck was our main.
Wikipedia is wrong.
So the truck was our main. Was like, we had the website, and then the truck was the main place we sold. So we did a road trip starting after Memorial Day weekend through July 4th across the country. So we went from Jersey all the way down to Georgia, across through Texas to Arizona to San Diego, up to San Francisco.
Yeah.
We were gone for like a month or so, and we were doing, everything from building the truck in the parking lot of a bar to the truck with a clothing store, like, in their parking lot, to a music festival. We had like been planning, like, working, hustling to find different places that we could park in.
Are you married at this point?
I'm married. So my wife so Mike and I started the business. My wife had her own business.
Yeah.
And she came on the trip with us because it was like
But no kids yet.
no kids yet.
Okay.
But I was like, we had started the business. Mike and I were like knee deep in it, and we were going on this trip. And I was like, "Hey, why don't you come? Like, it'd be fun. You could do it." And I think at the same time, I knew it was like, there was so much that needed to be done. Like, you quickly realize how much you need to do in our business. Like, between shipping all the product and the inventory and the marketing and the tech, like, it's just a million things you have to do. And I was like, I was so overwhelmed.
I was gonna say, what's the
turn that mic just towards you this way? There you go. This is good stuff. I don't want anyone to not hear it.
That's what I want to know. What's the vibe like during this time? Because I sit here, I'm like, man, that sounds sweet. You're just driving a truck around the country, like hanging out, trying to sell stuff. But on the other end, you're probably seeing expense.
Yeah, expense.
But wait, describe the truck too, though. It's this big
so what we
wooden
did
truck.
was we had custom built. A friend of ours from Belmar went to college with a guy who we knew was a builder. He would come down, on the weekends in the summer, and we knew him. So we knew he was like a really good builder of like custom things. And then Mike had a friend who was an architect from college, and so we're like, all right, these are two people we know. So Mike like put them together, and they're like, we want to build this trailer that kind of looks like a beach house.
Yeah.
And Mike and my mom like customized on this thing where it's basically like a wooden wooden outside, like a house, a beach house. But what they did was they created a big opening on one side with hydraulics.
Like a food truck almost.
Yeah, and so you could push a button and the whole, one side of the whole thing would come down. So you have like this open store. And on the other side, like the top and the bottom came down. And they custom designed it with the architect, Mike's architect friend, and this guy in New Hampshire. And that was our first big expense besides inventory, was this like mobile store. And I remember we did like a pop-up on the beach in Spring Lake, and our friends came and like checked it out. And that was in March of 2013, and then we traveled the country with it.
So Mark and I are wrestling here on these questions because it's
No.
interesting. No,
It is. It's cool.
I still have to answer your question.
We're not twins, but we have a decent dynamic. I can't match your dynamic.
So the quick thing, I like going back to I think your heart.
Who's driving the truck though?
We had a guy we knew who had just graduated college.
And then are you guys following along in like an SUV or something?
So it's a pickup truck that then the hitch connects to the trailer. So think of like a big boat on the back.
So you guys are all in this.
We're in the pickup truck. So there's 5 of us in the pickup truck. There's the driver, Matt Catalano, who's our photographer, and then Mike, Karen, and I in the back.
Wow.
Nice.
Yeah.
And so I think quickly I realized like this is crazy.
Yeah.
Like all these decisions I made, I got you get so like I got to make this business successful. Like Mike, Karen, and I moved in together. So I got married in August, and like 2 months later, the 3 of us moved in together. My wife's like, what? Like, I'm moving in with your twin brother, and we just got married. And I'm like, I wanted to do this. You were okay with it. This is what we got to do. And then when we started, all of a sudden, like you realize like it's, you no longer have income.
You're just bleeding cash.
You no longer we weren't making money in the beginning. So now so what happens is quickly, like your body shifts into survival mode. And so then it was like, I got to figure everything out. Mike's got to figure everything out. We got to do whatever we can to make this business successful. And I went into like just crazy business building mode.
Do you ever, like when you have an employee, like let's say you have an important employee and they come to you and they want more, or they're, this, or well, you need to give more. Do you ever harken back to those days when like you were, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like no apologies, right?
Yeah, we had to do everything. Like if you think of that trailer tour in those first couple of years, like, you're driving in the trailer, you're parking it, you got to open it, you got to put all the inventory away, you got to steam all the inventory, you got to put all the inventory up, you got to count all the inventory, you got to stand all day for 8 hours in the sun selling to people. Everyone who comes in, like these people don't know the brand. So you're going into this whole world of like, I was sitting behind a desk and now I'm just basically selling bathing suits across the country to people. Yeah. And it was a thing that I actually quickly realized, like I loved the personal aspect of like doing something that was like super tangible. So I like selling to people. I like telling people about the brand. I like the change of like versus sitting behind a desk and like having an analytical job. I love the idea of like everything I'm doing is helping to drive one more sale. And I had this thing where I was like, if we can sell $1,000 a day of shorts, like we're going to get through the first year. So I had the number, and every day I would wake up like, how are we going to sell
$1,000 gross of shorts.
Yeah. So that would be, so $1,000 in sales a day. That would equal $365,000 on our website or
and
whatever.
you could make it work.
And I was like, that'll be it for that. That was like our first year goal. So it was like everything we did in that first year was how do we get $1,000 a day? So that's why we would go all these different stops. Like one time we were driving from LA to San Francisco. We had an event in San Francisco, and we were driving. We're like, oh, we got to take this like in Big Sur, like on the one. And so we're like, oh, why don't we just pull over? It was in August. It was in June, and it was kind of busy. So like, why don't we just pull over, open the truck up, and see if anyone comes and shops, like on the side of the road.
That's awesome.
Like overlooking like the cliffs of California.
Yeah.
And we pull over, and we're just like sitting there hanging out, and like some family comes up. They all buy something, and it was like $600, and we're like,
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. Did you ever have like famous people come up in those early days, like that you remember?
Trying to remember the famous people that stuff when we was a couple years into it when we started expanding in LA.
Yeah,
that was when we started seeing some famous people wear it, and I remember like Justin Bieber wore a pair of shorts once.
Were there any people you don't want them to wear? No, I'm just
Yeah.
kidding. You don't want to wear your stuff.
You're right. We are.
P. Diddy was a big thing, something like that.
So what was like the tipping point then? So you're struggling, you're trying to make things work, $1,000 a day.
So $1,000 a day. That's the first year, and then I would say one of the big was we were working on this clothing collection. So Mike was building shirts, pants, like a collection. Like a fashion designer wants to build his collection, like his first collection. And so, I knew the collection was coming. I started learning more about the business. I was like, all right, like we want to sell into wholesale, like sell into other stores. Because we realized like we don't have a ton of money, so like hard to build an online business if you don't have a ton of money for marketing.
So you guys are you're traveling the country almost like a new rock band, touring.
That's what
spreading
exactly right. So it was like little hits here, little hits there, little hits here, little hits there. So
was that the business plan, or it was just you
that
just
was for
said,
the first year?
Let's do this.
The first year of the business plan, because all we had was the website, and I'm someone who I want to sell $1,000 a day, and on a website business, like unless you have money, I can't like call. I wasn't dialing for dollars yet.
Yeah.
I could have dialed for dollars.
Yeah.
And like go on the website.
Yeah.
But I was like, let's go in physical. We have this truck we built. Let's just try and as many days as possible have the truck somewhere.
Yeah.
Go somewhere.
And so that was the plan in advance. We're going to spend a year on the road.
For the most part, yeah. We were
That's
probably like
that's just kind of spreading.
3 months for that year. We were on the road. We did a big Midwest road trip in the fall.
And whose idea is that? Is that like, do you go to how to start a clothing line school, and they say, okay, your first year you have to drive, or is this just something that you came up with?
Yeah, this was my idea of like how do you sell
really cool.
How do you sell stuff? And I wanted to get on the road. I wanted to see people's reactions to it. I wanted to like get a lot of feedback versus like when you just have a business getting off the ground and like ours, there's only so little you can do if you sit in an office.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, so I realized like I got to get on the road. We got to get in front of people.
Were you thinking like, what are our markets going to be when you're planning out that trip? Like,
No,
are you
just
thinking
like I just knew we wanted to get across the country, and I had friends. It was like hitting people that you may knew. Like,
is your total inventory in the truck, or did you have to resupply it?
We had some inventory,
points?
so we had we were friends with Bill Dorr from Hatteras, and they had a warehouse over by the Jersey Mike's headquarters.
Okay.
Like an old one. So we rented a little space from him. So we housed our inventory over there in Wall, and then we had the rest of it on the trailer.
And then
if you got to order an e-commerce order, it would ship out. My mom and my mom's friend.
I was going to say, who's handling
my mom and my mom's friend were shipping out the orders.
But does the trailer run out of supply?
And then we would ship it somewhere. We would ship it somewhere.
And pick it up and rendezvous.
Yeah, so we'd be like, hey, we're going to be in Austin on this date.
And we need a bunch of size larges.
There's so much just logistics.
So I would manage all the inventory. Like we need 10 units of this size. You think about everything. You need smalls, you need mediums, you need larges. So that was like all of a sudden realizing like the complexities of inventory, of making sure you have enough, making sure it's in the right place.
How devastating would that be when someone came up? They're like, "Hey, do you have a small?"
Oh my god! Still to this day, if I'm working in like one of our stores and I walk in and somebody, I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
I worked.
We have it because we'll have it one place, and I'm like, oh, we can ship it to you. Like, no, I want it now, and I'm like, oh, man, how did we miss that?
If you know this, I have a slight background in retail. I worked at a like sporting goods store. We mainly sold sneakers. Someone would come in, they'd be like, "Do you have a size like 10?" Be like, "No, our Red Bank store has it." But my boss would be like, "Come on, we'll get them here by the end of the day. Come back." They're going to go to Miles Ahead, or they're going to go.
I always said like, You got every sale you can get. You got to save it. So I would drive things to. I remember I had one sale. It was an online sale, and it was some person I know, and they were like, "I need these shorts by tomorrow. I'm going to the Hamptons," and I got in my car from Spring Lake and drove to the Upper East Side of Manhattan with
That's
3 pairs of shorts.
Wow.
Because going back to this, I had this thing. We got to do $1,000 a day to make it. And when you're in survival mode, my body just was like, I got to do anything it takes to get this thing, keep this thing moving.
I feel like that's really the only way you can create a business and have it be successful. Like I listened to Shoe Dog, the Phil Knight thing. It's the same thing. He's got people coming to his parents' house at 11 o'clock at night for shoes. And filling orders.
And Jared, one of the things we did, it was funny you said around losing this mentality of what it was like to start the business and do everything. And when people come to me and this is so hard, I'm like, you have no
exactly.
Idea. I'm working too hard. I'm like, you have no idea. You have no idea. We just redid our company core values, and one of the core values that we added was day one mentality. Because I think now that we're 12 years in, is we never want to lose that. We always want to have that startup.
Right.
That startup. I want people to think, the way we thought in the beginning. We got to figure it all out. It wasn't that it was. Oh, I can't do it because it's not my job.
You want that young and hungry.
Everything was
still.
our job. So I think you want people who wake up with a ton of accountability and want to solve problems and build things, and they wake up and they're frustrated if something's not happening, and rather than being frustrated, they just go do something about it.
So you're driving around the country at about 29?
That was 2013, so I am just turned 30.
Wow. That's not that early to start something like that. That's getting up there a little bit.
Yeah, it was just I was on the edge where if I didn't do it then, we had just gotten married and we probably would have had a kid, and that makes the decision a little harder. So the timing kind of worked out. And going back to your point on the tipping point was Mike had built his collection, and then we got to wholesale it and sell in other stores because we need the scale of other stores. And so we started learning about that business, and we presented our collection. We signed up for a couple trade shows, and the best thing was we had this mobile store. So let's have the mobile store be our trade show booth. So there was this trade show in New York City that we wanted to be at, but it was really expensive, and we were we found out about it late because we were just kind of figuring out we wanted to get into wholesale. And so we called the people and we don't have space. I'm like, well, what if we just parked outside? And so we worked out a deal with them where we parked outside the entrance. The beach house parked outside the entrance, and that was our trade show booth.
So you didn't pay, you did.
We had to pay a little bit.
Okay.
But it was still cool because rather than being in a booth inside of a trade show with a lot of other brands, we had our own spot. More. Yeah. And so all the buyers from the stores that walked in saw this thing. And so it ended up being an amazing trade show booth, and people just wandered on. And, I think the reception of it was wow, this is kind of cool. To your point on validation, it's casual, it's beachy, but it's really nice. Yeah. It's as good as the stuff that I'm used to buying, but it's not so serious. It's got color. Yeah. This actually fits something that I'm missing.
Yeah. When I grew up, it was before NAFTA, and we didn't have a ton of money growing up and stuff. And I remember that if we got a wiffle ball bat, it was wow, I got a wiffle ball bat and a ball. And that's maybe just in today's dollars, the wiffle ball bat might have been $15, a bat and 2 balls. And then when NAFTA came, the market just got flooded with stuff. And I remember when I was little and I would get something, I would really sort of cherish it and appreciate it more. And so when you talk about, you can go to Marshall's and get a $15 or $25 pair of shorts that are going to tear, and but if you get your $120 shorts, at least that's what they were when they started. What I find, the things I have of Faherty, I'm oh, that's a Faherty. It's not that you cherish it, but it's good more quality, you know what I mean? It's
100%. Yep.
So there's something about that.
Yeah. And so I think people saw Mike's the way he thought about how to make the clothes look vintage, the detail, the button detail, the sewing detail, the trim detail. They noticed that this guy knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
And, honestly, a lot of startup fashion brands aren't started by, a lot of them are started by people who have no idea about fashion. They're just someone who had a business idea, and they then kind of figure out how to become a fashion designer.
Yeah.
Because to your point, a lot of fashion designers don't leave their job.
Yeah.
Because they're I got this good job, I'm doing what I want. They know the chances of success are so low.
Yeah.
It's people like me who come from another industry.
Yeah.
Who don't realize how hard it is. But I think Mike, obviously we had each other. And one of the things that came out of this first trade show, and all of a sudden people kind of hearing about the brand, and I think there started to be a little bit of buzz, was we got picked up by Nordstrom. So a Nordstrom buyer came by and had heard about it through the grapevine, I think through a friend of a friend, that, oh, there's this cool new brand. And a lot of stores at this time were looking for better bathing suits because it was kind of the moment where like everyone was like, maybe the long bathing suits are not for our fashion customer. And so they were looking for new bathing suits brands. And so that was how people started like recognizing that maybe there was a need for us.
At the Nordstrom point, is it still T-shirts and bathing suits?
Just bathing suits. To begin with Nordstrom, it was like they saw some of the clothing, but they were like, "Oh, we kind of heard about you as like a bathing suit thing, so nothing yet." And so that in America there wasn't a ton of traction. What happened was there was this woman who represented a bunch of Japanese stores, and she heard about it, and she started telling some of her stores that she worked with about us, and all of a sudden I remember that was in July, and then we had another trade show in Las Vegas in August, and over that month time period, we started getting inbounds because our style is like surfing's really big in Japan. They really like quality. They like American brands, like American vintage. They love this brand Double RL that Mike worked for. And all of a sudden, we're getting these emails in Japanese.
Wow.
That's so fun. So you guys blew up in like Japan?
Well, I wouldn't say blow up yet, but there was
we'll
interest. There was interest. And so we were like, oh my God, what do we do? And Mike had this one guy. I was like, who do you know that's Japanese? And he's like, I got this one guy who worked for this Japanese fabric mill, Kenji, who was like his sales guy. And so we called Kenji, like, Kenji, we need your help. And so Kenji, we're like, hey, Kenji, you're our Japanese sales rep. And all of a sudden, we had this one store that picked us up called Journal Standard, which is a really cool specialty store. Another store, and all of a sudden we're in the 3 best stores in Japan. And the orders that first season for that next year, Japan was our biggest market, bigger than the United States. And so we went to Japan. We'll never forget this. In that next year when we were launching the clothes, and it was so cool. Like Mike, Karen, and I went, and we went to Tokyo, and we did a trunk show, and all these people, all the people like Faherty, and they made signs for us, and wow. Oh my God. And then we went to this town called Fukuoka, which is this big city in the south. They had waves, we went surfing, they put on a fashion show for us, and it was oh my God, this is so cool. We're in Japan.
Wow. People wearing our stuff.
It's in these great stores, and it looks super cool. And so for the first couple of years in other stores, we had gotten more traction in Japan than we did in the U.S. And then stuff happens. The dollar had some real issues against the yen. Style trends changed a little bit. So Japan all of a sudden we're a couple years in, and that Japan business goes away, and oh my God, what are we gonna do? Yeah. And then we just I know I'm sort of. I think the rest of the story, there's the Japan story, there's the truck story, and then a lot of it.
I can't wait to get to the Jalen Brunson story because I'm a huge Villanova fan.
The rest of it, honestly,
let's keep in line here.
2013, 14 is just, it's a grind. It's just every day a little bit more, a little bit better. Bad things happening, stuff coming in wrong, some good things happening, and it's just it's a cycle of that. And at some point, the wholesale business, once we lost the Japan business, we're what are we going to do? We got to figure out a way to grow. And we had this little tiny store that we opened up on Thompson Street where we had our headquarters. So we had this in New York City, we had this headquarters, when I say headquarters, 800 square feet space with a little 200 square foot store on a side street in Greenwich Village. Not any place you would think about.
Sounds like a 2-bedroom apartment.
Yeah, so we slept in there for the first couple months.
Wow.
How big's the headquarters now?
At 30,000 square feet, beautiful, overlooking New York City. It's sick.
Wow.
Again, I don't mean to jump ahead in the story here, but we'll keep going.
Yeah, it gets better.
That's wild.
It gets better. And but we knew we wanted to have a store. We had this little pop-up that was small, and we knew we wanted to have a store. And growing up, my mom's best friend lived in LA, and so we'd go to LA a lot for spring break, and we'd always love going surfing at the Malibu Pier. It's just a cool vibe to go to Malibu as these Jersey Shore surfer kids. And there's a shopping center in Malibu called the Malibu Country Mart, and it's a cool shopping center because it's there's shops, there's outdoor eating, they built a really cool kids playground in the middle of the park, in this grassy area right in the middle of the shopping center. It's just a sweet, cool vibe. And we would go there, and we're this place is so cool. And one day, into our little tiny store on Thompson Street, this guy comes in. He's like, hey, is one of the Fahertys here? I'd love to talk to him. And this guy comes in, and he's like, and I talked to him. He's like, oh, I'm one of the leasing reps for the Malibu Country Mart. I heard about your brand and just wanted to kind of create a relationship with you. And I'm like, okay, cool. We're not ready to open up stores yet. just getting started. And then he, out of the blue, called me one day and he's like, hey, I got this amazing opportunity. We just had this lease that we were about to sign on this location and it just fell apart. Like, I think you guys should look at it. I think you'd be a cool fit for it. And we're like, and it was like the best location.
In California?
In this place in Malibu.
Wow.
Yeah.
And, usually it's like goes to big brands and global. And for whatever reason, he's like, fell through.
Are you at that point though, like, how the hell am I going to run an office in New York City and a store across the country? Like, were you like, what were you thinking about?
Yeah,
that?
I mean,
we'll
I
just
was
hire a
just
manager.
I was just thinking I'll hire a manager, and I was just born Mike too. Like, we'll just figure it out. And so, like, for whatever reason, I didn't worry too much about what was going to happen.
Jed, will you fill his water?
I wasn't too worried about what was going to happen, and I just knew like could be a game-changing opportunity for us to have this amazing store in this place we always wanted a store that's like a celebrity magnet. It's like it's like really cool, and we were like, let's do it. But like we didn't have the money, so but when you sign a lease like months in advance.
Oh yeah.
So like we signed the lease and then we had like 4 months to build it, and so we're like, all right, we got enough to like get us, but like once we have to do real construction.
I love the vibe of your stores, man. I always feel like I'm going into a surf shack or something. I love the wood, the exposed wood. There's like a relaxed atmosphere about it. It's like, it's cool. It makes me want to buy shit when I walk in there.
I give total credit to my mom. She was, as I said, when we started the brand, we're like, Mom, you're in. Carrie, my wife, you're in. Like, we're all just in. We'll figure this out together. And as I said, mom shipped orders for the first 6 months. And then we did this little pop-up. She built the mobile store. We did this little pop-up in New York. She did. And then she was the one who was going to help us design the stores. And she kind of had this vision of, what we wanted. And she worked with Mike on it. And so we had the store in Malibu was like the first real version of this coming together in a retail environment. And we didn't have the money. And it was like this fortuitous thing where like, we need an investor. At this point, like it's actually harder to raise money when you're in business for a couple of years.
Okay.
Because you now have some traction and people like, what it's like it's $1 million in sales or whatever. Like, people like either think it's going to go from like 0 to like this. They don't realize that it takes a long time.
Amazon was in the red. You call it the red, right? Was in the red for like 15 years.
They're just selling books, right? For a long time.
Yeah,
Amazon
something like that.
books.
20 years.
So it was we had a hard traction, kind of raising money to get kind of like the next bit of they want to open up these stores. And I got an email forwarded to me from customer service to hello@Faherty Brand, which is like our customer service email. And it was this email saying, hey, this is for Alex and Mike. Like, hey, this is my name. I bought some shirts. I think they're really cool. If you ever, looking for an investor or whatever, like, hit me up. And I like looked him up and I was like, this is a real guy. Like, this is not like a real guy. So
sounds like an intake we get. Does this person exist?
It's a real guy. So I looked up the name. I knew someone who worked at it. Worked at an investment firm, and we met, had a phone call. We got in person together, and he's like, I really think what you guys are doing is cool. I think you guys are a great team, and I really like your vision. Like, I'm in. So he gave us some money to kind of get the retail thing going. And so we opened up the store in Malibu, and it was the first time we spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on a store. And I'll never forget, we came that first weekend for the opening, and we didn't know what to expect. Like, are people gonna come in? Like, the good thing we knew it was in good real estate. Like, that's what I've learned in this is like the power of real estate and the power of foot traffic and the power of like a vibe. So if you have a good vibe, good foot traffic, people will linger in, and then you have to have the product. But we always thought we had good product. It was like, we just got to get people, we got to get it in people's hands. We got to get people to touch it. We got to get people to see it in person.
Yeah.
And so we knew we had traffic, and we had an opening day that Saturday, and it was busy.
Wow.
It was much as good as we could have ever expected. And we're like, okay, we're on to something.
In business, people want to talk to the owner. They want to. Do you guys feel like you have an advantage? You're getting a 2-for-1 deal. Like, you get because you guys are identical twins that you can almost be in 2 places at once.
You say, "Oh, that was my brother." Sorry, you had that bad experience.
Yeah,
Find that an advantage in business.
It does a couple things. I think it doubled our network to start. So when you think about relationships, potential investors, potential customers, like we went to different colleges.
And you being identical twins in a business, haven't grown up. Do you guys have that weird? You hear that thing about like identical twins, like something happened to the brother in California, and then in Florida he felt the same thing. Do you guys have like this cosmic connection?
I wouldn't say I don't feel like when he's not in my presence, I don't. But like when we're together,
Yeah.
I mean, we say the same thing all the time.
You're just bouncing off each
Say
other.
the same thing. Like, so he'll say something, and I'll be like, I was thinking the same thing. Like, our brains are very much like wired to process information and solve problems very similarly.
And so, are you guys technically partners?
Yeah. So
Okay.
the co-founders of the business are Mike and I and my wife Carrie, and then Mike's the chief creative officer. I'm the CEO, and she's the chief impact officer.
So I have to imagine there's like zero distrust like between you and your brother. You're almost and that is a huge advantage in business because partnerships and stuff like we do, as lawyers, we see like, businesses fail and then partners are at war with each other. It happens all the time, happens in divorce and stuff. But it seems like the other advantage you guys have as identical twins is like you're almost like
total trust,
inseparable and stuff.
I mean, total like, there's no one better for the job than him. And for him, there's no one better than the job for me. So yeah, there's things he does that sometimes I'm like, Mike, we shouldn't do this. And some things I do, he says we shouldn't do this. But there's never like there's never
he's trying to screw me or something.
Never, ever. Because we're, our interests are so aligned.
Yeah.
Like the reason we're doing it is the same. What we're getting out of it's the same. That I couldn't have asked for a better like partner as far as, having your twin and doing it. Like that's been an amazing experience over time. And I just got, lucky to have a twin.
So you open Malibu. Malibu goes great. What's keeps going on with the business?
So then the next thing we did was we're like, all right, we got to spend money in marketing, like to get people to buy online. This is kind of right when Facebook advertising is happening, Google advertising is happening. We're like, all right, we got to do something because at this point we hadn't really done any of that. But I'm like, I don't really get this like clicking and buying, like because I didn't come from like the e-commerce world. But I was like, you know what? The brand always had good visuals. Like that's one of the things that Mike did well. And I was like, why don't we do a catalog? Like, let's do a catalog. Like I felt like there weren't that many catalogs anymore. People had stopped doing catalogs. Everyone was all about like internet marketing. And I was like, let's do a catalog. Like maybe that's like a alternative way of thinking about it. So we did our first catalog in 2016 and, kind of told the brand story, did one of these campaigns in a cool looking place, made the clothes look nice. And the catalog like did well. Like,
Great.
There's a response rate, there's an ROI, and it was actually like relatively successful. So that was the first thing we spent on. And for the next few years, really our main marketing, besides the couple stores that we had, was this catalog. And then we're like, then we got to do digital marketing. So the next step was doing digital marketing. And we did another store. And it was just really, like I said, like sort of like step by step, the mobile store, the wholesale, and all this stuff wholesale keeps growing a little bit. One more retail store like a year.
And how many employees do you have at this point?
At this point, 10.
Like who's doing all this?
Mike, Carrie, and my mom are doing most of it. And then we hired some entry level, like, a couple years out of college. So we're probably, to start, we had one other person, 5 people, then we're probably 7 people, then we're 10 people.
Well, who's on the ground at the Malibu store?
We hired a manager, hired someone who had worked at another store.
And you have computer programs and stuff to keep inventory and know where the money's going and all that?
We found a POS system that we used and had to kind of figure out how to get that all set up and all the nuances. And then, then we kind of hired a couple people. So we, at that point we had a little bit of scale, doing a few million in revenue, hire a couple people, but we're still doing most everything besides some entry level things. And then, then I remember one year we hired our first like wholesale sales manager, and it was like, wow, like if you actually hire someone to run this for you, it's amazing how much more they can do.
Right.
And then they actually know people too. Right. And you realize like if you hire the right person, they can really do a lot with it. And step by step, like we need to hire, we need to build out this department. So like, let's hire one person. But while you're doing this, you're making mistakes on hiring. You're screwing things up. You're hiring the wrong person. You're hiring the right person. You don't realize they're the right person. There's drama. It's just because when you're 8 people, 10 people, 12 people, all trying to figure out this startup, it's chaos. And the real, like, if I think back at our journey, like we did a good job of like some brands, like I only want to be e-commerce, or I only want to be retail, or I only want to be wholesale. We're like, we're going to do all of them. And we're also like going to do lots of products. So we always had a lot of products. Like, so we were kind of like probably doing way too much, but we're like, you know, let's just try it all, do a little bit of everything. We got to do it all. We got to figure out how to survive. Like if we're going to figure out how to survive, we got to do everything. So most brands at that time were just like e-commerce only. They weren't doing wholesale, or they weren't opening up stores because stores were too much risk.
What I'm finding is like with COVID and everything being electronic and virtual, like newspapers are going away because everyone's swiping on their phone. But what I'm finding is there's a rebound back to the real. Like there's a rebound back to the tangible. So like it was nice getting your catalog, and I still get it. Like something you can actually touch and feel. Like I stopped watching internet news. I just get the Wall Street Journal, and I get it every Saturday. And I open up a paper and feel it. And there's a real thing I think these days about, you know, a face-to-face and in person, or just a handwritten letter has so much more impact these days because people are getting insane with the phones and the clicking and the constant information overload. That back to simplicity is like, you know.
Yeah. And so still like it's a mess. It's crazy.
It's every business.
It's
Don't
crazy.
feel bad, man.
And then the big
every
moment, I'd say the
business is
big
like that.
moment, if I look back at the journey, like the big, you know, seismic moment for us was COVID.
Yeah.
So COVID hits. We were excited about having a good year. Like we had good momentum. So we bought a bunch of inventory going into that spring 2020. You know, we now had 11 stores. So we had kind of like did the 2016 store, like maybe one store, two stores 1 year. So we had 11 stores. So not a lot, but still like a little bit. We had hired our first like head of stores. So we're starting to get a little bit of leverage. And COVID comes, and all of a sudden we're like, dude, this is it. Like we're done.
This is the A-bomb
like
hitting.
all the stuff we've been doing for all these years. And I remember like just like these like moments of like, yeah, there's no way we're gonna survive through this. Like, and you know, having conference calls with, you know, we probably had 30 people at the company at the time. Like, I don't know what's gonna happen. Like when everything got shut down, like I don't know what's gonna happen. You know, first step was we had to furlough a bunch of people.
I remember I was in the parking lot back here at our office, and I think it was with my wife Dodie, and we had this. It was the same thing. It was the same, like we were looking, or maybe it was with you, and I was like looking at each other, and like
probably 6 feet apart, like, you know.
Yeah, we have all this inventory that we bought already that we paid for. You know, all of a sudden stores are closed. All of our wholesale customers cancel their inventory, and we're like, all we had was our e-commerce business. You know, because our numbers, you need a little bit of wholesale, you need a little bit of retail to make the whole pie work.
Yeah.
And, you know, March to April, it's like, you know, oh my God, we got this PPP going to happen, you know, hunkering down, like stop spending a lot of money on marketing. We had to, you know, furlough a bunch of the team members, like cut our expenses down to like bare minimum. And, you know, we're like a month into it, and like all of a sudden, like the e-commerce business, like is not as bad as we thought. So we had put a plan together like right after COVID, and we're like, this is the sales, this is the expenses. Like we don't have really any cash to, like, we need to raise money or something needs to happen, or else like we're in trouble. And so we had the forecast, and like, you know, week 3 in April, like it got a little bit better. You know, like week 4 in April, it got a little bit better. You know, then May comes, and like, you know, weather turns, and all of a sudden, like we had a day where like our e-commerce business was up like 40% versus last year. Okay, like this is a lot better than we thought. We thought everyone's going to stop spending. No one's going to buy anything. Everyone's hunkered down at home.
Another smart move, diversifying between the stores, the catalog,
totally.
and the e-commerce.
Yeah. So that how, you know, we had the e-commerce. So we had laid the foundation on the e-commerce business. Still wasn't big, but we had laid the foundation, and they're just like, all of a sudden we're like, you know, we had started spending money on some of the digital marketing back in 2018. So we were ready for that. And all of a sudden we're like, oh, maybe let's increase our budgets a little bit and see what happens. And it was like, oh my God. Like the return on ad spend was incredible. I'm like, this is like insane. Started spending a little bit more money, and all of a sudden, like the e-commerce business was up like 100%, and then it was like 150%. And so all of a sudden, the e-commerce business is like exploding.
Wow.
While all these other stores, all these other businesses are basically collapsed. So June was like an amazing month because I think all these people were like going somewhere, like they were now living in a beach town, or they were, you know, like people were sort of like changing a lot of their buying habits. Especially our customers are pretty affluent customer, And I was like, what the F is going on? Like, it was like crazy.
What the Faherty is
what
going
the Faherty
on.
is going on. And then the next big thing that happened was, we're like, in that time, people started shuttering stores. They're like, retail's dead. No one's going to shop in stores. Anyone wants to shop online. And I'll never forget, we opened up our...
Again, it's the slogan's law, policy, life. We're going to stick with life here, and we're not going to talk about the law and policy of what bullshit that was that they started shutting down the economy. But anyway, keep going.
And so I'll never forget, at some point in June, they were like, all right, the Northeast was obviously, most of our stores were in LA and the Northeast at this time, which wasn't super favorable to COVID. But I'll never forget, we opened up our store in Sag Harbor, Long Island. That was the first.
I saw your guys' store there.
That was one of the first store we opened. And we're like, all right, we're going to open, like, it's going to be cobwebs. No one's going to shop. And we opened up and it was like bananas.
Yeah.
Because all these people were like in these beach house, in their like second homes, and there had been nothing to do for months.
Oh, and they're probably going to die soon.
Yeah.
Because we were all going to
Might as
die.
well
So
go
you
spend
might
it
as
on
well
a
go
bathing
buy a
suit.
nice
Yeah.
pair of shorts.
So the Sag Harbor store opened and business was bananas. And then like Spring Lake store opened, business was bananas. Like Nantucket opened, business was bananas. And so all of a sudden, it's like the retail business. Obviously, the stores in New York City were horrible. The stores
My
in LA
wife
were
was
horrible.
telling me someone walked into Faherty, I don't know, one of the first like year or two, and this guy walks out with like $1,500 worth of stuff. She's like, yeah, these guys are just coming in Spring Lake, and they're just loading up the.
Yeah, so they had nothing, didn't have much to do. They had some money to spend, and
And they're going to die soon because of
yeah,
COVID.
and so the retail business started to do better than we thought because these beach locations did really well. And I think we saw then, as those stores started doing better, another thing that popped into our head was like, all right, maybe this is a moment. You always kind of, I remember reading, listening to podcasts, and like on my journey being like, take times of like distress and times of when things are chaotic to like make a bold move that's like maybe against the grain. And I listened to this podcast, How I Built This. I don't know if you guys ever seen that podcast, about the guy who started Panera Bread.
Okay.
And he had talked about how in 2008, when the Great Recession hit, he was like, in his mind, like, wow, this could be an amazing time to expand because real estate's going to be cheap. Construction costs are going to be cheaper. And I remember like that stuck with me.
Yeah.
And so when everyone was like, we're going to close our retail stores, retail's dead, I was like, actually, in the places that we have stores, it's really good right now. So that whole concept is wrong. You just don't have stores in these places that we have stores.
Were they considered essential services, or did
No,
you have to shut down?
It was once they opened up to non-essential services. So as I said, it was June, it was July 4th in some places.
Got it.
Memorial Day maybe in one place. And so we made a conscious bet kind of in that year, end of year 2020, that we were going to really sign leases at these great prices.
Yeah.
Because now we had the e-commerce momentum that was happening.
Yes.
And we were like, at some point, the e-commerce business is going to slow down. People are going to get back to normal habits. And then we're going to have this retail
And
expansion.
construction costs were cheap at that point too. Well, not necessarily cheap, but construction was an essential services, so they couldn't stop construction projects.
So we started signing leases in all these great locations that we had wanted to be in that we thought were going to take us 10 years. But all of a sudden, no one was signing leases. Like, we were the only one in the market for like a year that was like signing leases.
Are you signing those personally? You personally
No,
guaranteeing?
companies buy. But at this point, like usually you need like a big security deposit.
Yeah.
Like landlords were like, anyone, please.
Right.
At that
Do
time.
you have someone scouting locations?
I had like an outsourced real estate
Okay.
brokerage company that was helping me. So we ended up signing like 30 leases in 2020 and early 2021 that was going to take us out for another 2 years. So all of a sudden it was like, we're going to have this bigger retail fleet.
But are you like, oh my God, I just signed 30 leases. Now I need 60 new managers and staff.
I'm
and-
like, I step by step, like we'll hire the one manager, we'll hire and as I said, I had hired a head of director of stores who was
Right.
great.
and they're
so
doing this.
He was, so some of it's a leverage. Like I hired the wholesale sales manager, like all of a sudden the wholesale business like started working well. I hired the director of stores who oversaw the stores. Stores started working. Like I realized like when you hire the right person, there's in some of those examples, I hired the wrong person, it didn't go well, and I had to, find someone else. But when you hire that right person that just like generally cares, generally wakes up every day and wants to do a great job and really connects with the team, connects with the partners, and just I think is can do what I can do, and I find them and I meet them, I hold them, like I hug them and I want them to work with me forever. Because it's a special thing when you find that person that you. All that stress you held for so many years, all of a sudden, like takes it off you. You're like, thank you, like, I love you.
Yeah.
And so retail expanded big in COVID. Today we have, we just opened up our 79th store today in Columbus, Ohio.
Wow.
Today?
You said?
Today, yeah,
Congrats.
79th.
That's great.
so retail's a big business now for us, and now wholesale's a great business for us. We're in every Nordstrom location. We're in a lot of smaller specialty stores, Bloomingdale's. We're in Europe in a few places. We opened up a restaurant last year for some reason.
Really?
Yeah, like you can't get enough stress and stuff.
Yeah,
You
to
need
your point, like
like
all these different things that happen. I think it's this mentality I have is like we'll figure it out, like because we figured out the first part.
Yeah.
And now everything feels like, you know, we'll find the right people. And I have an inherently amazing amount of trust in people.
Yeah.
And you get better instinct at who's the right person and the wrong person. And like, you know, they can do so much for you. But yeah, we have a restaurant. And now the business really, like, I'm at that point where like we've got 140 people who work in our headquarters. We have this great office in New York. We have about 500 employees that work in our stores. And I have an amazing team, like people that work at Faherty. A lot of them who run our company are people who came in year 3, year 4, year 5. And I think I've learned that experience of like we went through a phase of like, oh, we got to hire outside people, you know, like with resumes working at big companies. And like sometimes that doesn't work. And a lot of times it's the people who've grown up at Faherty who, like our head of HR right now, she started when she was 18. She was in college. She started as a sales assistant at our first little store. And she's 29 and she runs all our HR. Because in those 11 years, she has gotten so much experience that it's so invaluable to what we're doing. And now, you know, now all those like little things that come up, I got people that really help take care of them. I'm still run the business day to day, but I have now such a like the feeling of survival like finally has lifted over the last couple of years. And that's when we moved back down here full time. So it's been an amazing journey, but it's, you know, if you would have told me, you know, 2013, like this was where you would be, I wouldn't even know, like it's beyond the wildest dreams of what could have happened as far as like where we are as a business and a brand. Like Mike and I were just in Florence for a trade show, you know, expanding the brand into Europe.
And I feel like, you know, because I see you around from time to time that you've never lost your humility. You know, you've never forgotten those early days and everything, and you're the same guy that you were back then. Obviously a bit older now and more experienced, but you're still grounded, down to earth, and that's cool too.
Yeah,
you know?
I think the business hasn't changed me. It maybe has made me even more humble, like even more like it beat the crap out of me. So
I mean, I was in one of your locations, I think at around Christmas time, and you were there going to grab a size for me upstairs.
Yeah,
and everything,
still work,
which is cool.
Work in the stores when I can. Never kind of lose that, and I love it. You know, that's a part of it. Is like that's what I love, the hands-on piece of it. I love connecting with the team. Love connecting with customers. Like that'll never go away. And as it like, I'm so fortunate. I wake up every day and I'm like, I have the greatest job in the whole entire. There's not a better job that I could possibly have. So like that is like sick.
Yeah, that's priceless. Yeah.
You guys are big on sustainability too. So there's something you work with the Native American community.
Yeah.
Where's that come from?
So on the sustainability, as I said, when we first launched, we were always inspired by Patagonia. Like I think when we thought of the brands that we wanted to emulate, Patagonia was one of them. As like a kid growing up.
I walked into the store recently. I said, I have this Patagonia shirt. Is that cool if I'm in here? It was funny. I was joking around.
Yeah, so it's definitely a brand we emulate. So we've since the beginning been using, you know, all of our synthetics are made out of recycled plastic water bottles or recycled nylon or fishing nets. Or we made a board shirt last year out of recycled oyster shells. That was super cool. We use all organic cotton. Now we use actually regenerative organic cotton, which is super unique. There's a certification we have called B Corp, which is this worldwide certification that you have to go through rigorous testing between your factories, the materials that you use, and we actually scored an 86, which is like one of the higher scores that you can get. And that's been a huge. I say my wife who founded us, like that's been, you know, having, you know, I've been so focused on the like running the business. Mike's been and having, you know, Carrie, who's been so focused on like how do we show up to the world, and how do we make as much as we can in a business that does pollute and make, you know, does sell things. Like how can we do the best that we can? And then the Native American initiative has been awesome. So at Ralph Lauren, they do a lot of Native American prints. You've probably seen that in some of their designs. So we actually started doing that because Mike had designed at Ralph Lauren, and my wife, I think, was like, oh, this is like for us like this kind of like white brand to like use all these Native American prints. Like, I don't know, it just doesn't feel right. And so she started like meeting some people, and they're like, who are Native American. They're like, yeah, it's not right. Like we don't think it's right. We want to be a part of it. And so what she did was she made some great connections with designers, indigenous designers. And so we now have half a dozen indigenous designers who every season will work with us on new collections, and they get a piece of the sales, and they're part of the whole profit chain. And it's been amazing for what that's done to some of their communities and their loved ones. That's been a really cool thing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I didn't know that. I see the thing. It's like the pullover, and it's got that. And now now I realize.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I don't know. This is another one too. We could go for 3 hours.
But what? It's late on a Friday, Mark.
Yeah.
And you want to get home, or
No, I got nowhere to be. I got nothing to do.
Hold
I
on.
got
I gotta see if I got anything.
mindful
This
of.
has gone on longer than I thought, guys. You guys are keeping me. I got some more.
All right, let's take a break real quick. All right, so talk real quick. We're going to finish up, but talk real quick about what this is like, what you were just talking about off a little bit.
Well, I just said if when people ask me, would you ever do this again?
Yeah.
I don't have like, it's hard for me to say yes or no. Like some days I'd be like, no, I would never do this again. Like it's been too hard on me physically, relationship based, because we had a kid a couple years in on it.
Yeah.
My wife's in on it, my brother's in on it, my mom's in on it, like just the family dynamics.
It's a lot.
My life was, at the time I was like, hey, this is totally normal. But like looking back on it, it was so not normal. Like I didn't have a regular 9-to-5 job. I didn't my weekends were traveling. I was on the road all the time, or then I was home and I was exhausted and trying to survive. And so I don't know how to answer that, but I think that now that I know what I know, I wouldn't have done any differently. Like it had to go the way that it went. We had to go through all these things together.
Yeah.
And got lucky. Lucky breaks happened. Hard work happened.
Real quick, because we got to go, but just tell me about the whole Rangers, Jalen Brunson
All right, cool.
thing.
So
just because Jalen's a big.
So I'm a huge Knicks fan.
Yeah.
And when Jalen got signed by the Knicks that summer, we were like, we got to meet him.
Yeah.
And so we went through some connections, obviously a lot of Villanova connections around here. And
it's
through someone that we know, we got introduced to Sam Rose, who's Jalen's agent. And we're like, we got to see if he'll want to do a deal with us. Like we got to sign Jalen Brunson as our first athlete ambassador. And we reached out to him, and they were like, Jalen had just signed with Knicks, so no one really knew who he was. And he was like an okay player on Dallas. And so we struck a deal, wasn't crazy expensive. And we're like, we'll do a photo shoot, come down. And so we ended up, our first photo shoot we did with Jalen was at Marucci Park.
Yeah.
And he was wearing the gear.
That's funny.
Marucci Park's a park in Spring Lake, New Jersey.
And that's when we linked up with him, and we had a lot in common, so we become friends. And so we've been working with Jalen now for 3 years, and that turned into we do a collaboration with the Knicks and the Rangers now every year.
That's cool.
And it's been awesome to kind of merge now some of my personal love, like my personal interests, like sports. So we're doing a lot of sports stuff, college sports stuff, with the brand.
So we're tight on time, so I feel like we just switched from a long-form podcast to a 7-second soundbite. So let's just get those sound bites in real quick. You're in Bloomingdale's now?
Nordstrom, Bloomingdale's.
And you're getting into food service and stuff?
We opened up a restaurant in Spring Lake called Sun and Waves.
Yeah, which is awesome. People love that place.
It's cool.
Yeah. That's wild. That's cool, man.
No, it's impressive.
Congratulations on everything. We really appreciate you taking the time. I know you're busy as heck, and it's really cool. I think you're positively contributing to the world with an awesome brand, your sustainability stuff. You got a ton of employees, so that's really cool.
Yeah.
So thanks a lot, Alex.
Cool. And Jerry, thank you for rescuing Mike and making this brand happen.
Yeah. I'll see you in the water.
All right,
Make
cool.
sure we don't drop in on each other on the waves.
Funny.